On my 60th birthday, there were no heartfelt wishes or joyful celebrations, only disorder and coldness. My husband, Robert, treated me like an annoyance, while my son, Daniel, seemed to care only about money. Not a single piece of the cake I had lovingly baked was saved for me, and when I finally voiced the words, "I want a divorce," they just laughed. "You're 60, Mom. No savings, no retirement fund. Where exactly do you expect to go?" They sneered. They assumed I would back down, but instead, I not only divorced Robert, I also fought for what was rightfully mine. Together with my closest friend Liz, I began a fresh chapter of my life. I hit the road, created short videos, and unexpectedly became an online sensation, making more money than they could ever dream of. As for Robert, the man who thought I couldn't survive without him, he ended up ill and alone. And Daniel, the son who showed me nothing but indifference, was left speechless when he learned how much I was earning. But by then, all he could do was regret his attitude. They warned me I'd regret my decision. But here I stand, beside the highway, sun warming my face, wind whipping through my hair, carrying nothing but freedom. 60 years old? So what? My life is only beginning. Mom, you're 60. Why are you even talking about divorce? Can't you just live the rest of your life in peace? Daniel asked, his voice sharp. I sat silently on the couch, staring at the mess around me. Broken dishes, overturned chairs, and the remains of the birthday cake I had painstakingly prepared. Daniel stood before me, simmering with anger. If you divorce Dad, what will Emily's family think of me? Can't you stop being so selfish? Selfish? I'd been gone for 7 hours today. Not once did my husband or son call to check on me. Out in the harsh December wind of San Francisco, without a coat, I shivered through the cold. And when I returned, what greeted me? Not concern, only blame. Mom, you ran away over some stupid birthday party. Dad and I ate the meal you cooked, didn't we? What else do you want? Robert snapped, rising from the couch with disdain dripping from his voice. So now you realize you've got nowhere else to go. Stop standing there and clean up this mess. And those shoes, leaving them everywhere, making the place filthy. You've ruined my entire day. I looked at him, my fingers tightening unconsciously around the hem of my sweater. Not once did they acknowledge that today was my birthday. Not once did they care that I'd spent hours wandering the freezing streets. Not once did they ask if I was all right. They simply didn't care. And the worst part? I said quietly, steadying my voice. We all made mistakes today. Let's just drop it, okay? Then, without hesitation, I said, I want a divorce. His face shifted immediately, disbelief flashing in his eyes. Robert jumped up, jabbed a finger in my direction, fury twisting his expression. Divorce? Fine. But where do you think you're going to go? You're 60, no savings, no pension. How do you plan to survive without me? Daniel sneered. Yeah, Mom. I just started working. I can't afford to support you. Yesterday, I might have locked myself in the bathroom and cried silently, but today I just felt numb. You don't need to worry about me. I'll be fine. I just want out. 30 years of marriage behind me, no job, every penny controlled by Robert, and every word he spat sharper than a blade. If it weren't for me, you'd be homeless. Look at yourself. Short, plain, can't even cook properly. An old woman like you? Nobody would want you but me. Once, I would have swallowed the pain and forced myself to endure, but tonight, I met his gaze with silence, unmoved. Robert hadn't expected that. He faltered. Anger caught briefly in his throat before sinking back onto the couch, frustration darkening his face. Daniel still didn't get it. Mom, seriously? Over a birthday? Is this really worth all this trouble? He sighed, rubbing his temples. Fine. How about I throw you a party tomorrow? Would that make you happy? Happy? I looked down at the shattered remains of my birthday cake. Was this really just about a birthday? Maybe. But it was so much more than that. Just last week, Daniel suddenly told me he wanted to throw me a birthday party. I could hardly believe it. In 60 years, no one had ever suggested celebrating my birthday before. I was so excited that I barely slept for days, constantly planning what to prepare. 3 days ahead, I was looking up recipes, eager to make something special. I didn't want to disappoint him. When my best friend Liz heard, she called me, confusion clear in her voice. Wait, you're cooking your own birthday party food? I laughed. Should I ask Robert and Daniel to cook? Those two have never set foot in the kitchen. If I left it to them, it would probably be more trouble than just doing it myself. Liz didn't let it go. Then why not eat out? Who has to cook for themselves on their birthday? I sighed. We're not as well off as you guys. Daniel's getting married soon. Everything costs money. I'm 60 years old. It's not like I need a fancy restaurant to celebrate. When Liz heard that, she immediately offered to pay so I could enjoy the day. I kept refusing. But after some coaxing, she gave in reluctantly. Honestly, I didn't care how the birthday was celebrated. As long as they remembered, I would be happy. This was the first real birthday I'd ever had in 60 years, and it was Daniel who had started it. I was so excited I couldn't sleep. At 4:30 in the morning, I got up and began preparing quietly, careful not to wake Robert. Still, he stirred and frowned, glaring at me. Did I wake you? I asked, a little embarrassed but with hope in my heart. After more than 30 years of marriage, I had hoped the first words he'd say when he woke would be, Happy birthday. But instead, he just turned over, lazily muttering, Why make such a fuss so early? If you're not going to sleep, can't you at least let someone else rest? Can't you be more considerate? I froze, stunned. For a few seconds, I didn't say a word. After all, it was my birthday. I didn't want to start a fight. I tried to shake off the disappointment and headed to the store, buying Daniel's favorite steak and potatoes. I worked nonstop from morning until noon, making the house warm and tidy. By 11, Daniel finally came home. The moment I heard the door unlock, I quickly took off my apron and rushed to greet him. I hoped he'd come in holding a gift saying, Mom, happy birthday. But his hands were empty. Just yesterday, he had posted pictures of earrings on social media and asked in the comments, Which pair do you think would be good for Mom? A chill ran through me, and my smile froze. Daniel noticed and frowned. What's wrong, Mom? Aren't you happy to see your son? I forced a smile. Of course I am. Why wouldn't I be? But I couldn't help asking, Aren't you going to give me a birthday gift? I saw you asking people yesterday which earrings would suit me best. He actually laughed. Mom, you didn't think those earrings were for you, did you? I'm taking them to Emily's house tomorrow. I'm giving them to her mom. I froze. That gift wasn't for me. He went on. Mom, you've always been frugal. You don't need things like that. Besides, Emily's mom is beautiful. Jewelry looks better on her. You're more suited to a kitchen apron. He paused, then grinned. Maybe I should get you some dishwashing gloves instead. How's that? He really believed I didn't deserve even a bouquet of flowers. I looked down at the sink where I was washing vegetables. The water surface mirrored a face marked by wrinkles, sagging skin around my eyes, and more strands of white weaving through my hair each day. To my son, I wasn't like Emily's mom. I didn't deserve a thoughtful gift or even basic respect. I had spent the entire day preparing a birthday feast. 8 dishes, each one carefully chosen because it was Daniel's favorite. There were appetizers, steak, roasted vegetables, and even a large pot of New England clam chowder, a recipe I'd painstakingly mastered just for this special occasion. I'd even researched how to plate everything beautifully, wanting it all to look perfect. As Robert passed through the kitchen, he glanced at the table and scoffed, Is all this really necessary? It's just a birthday. I didn't respond. I kept working quietly. This was the very first real birthday I'd ever had. I wanted it to be memorable. When I finally placed the last dish on the table and wiped the flour from my hands, I was filled with excitement. I lifted the small cake I had baked for myself, ready to finally sit down and savor the moment. But then I stopped dead. The table was nearly bare. The food I had spent hours preparing had been devoured, leaving only scraps behind. Daniel looked at the cake in my hands and frowned. Mom, that's it? You spent all that time and this is all you made for yourself? A cold wave crept into my chest as I glanced at Robert, whose face held the same impatient look. But this was my birthday, my very first real one. I wanted at least one happy memory to look back on. I forced a smile and tried to joke. Hey, wasn't this supposed to be my celebration? The birthday girl hasn't even sat down yet, and you two have already eaten yourselves full. I meant it to be lighthearted, harmless. But Robert's face darkened immediately. He slammed his fork onto the table and shot me a glare. What the hell do you mean by that? Daniel hardly comes home and now you're telling him not to eat? I was stunned. I scrambled to explain it was just a joke, but Robert's voice only rose, dripping with fury. Joking? 60 years old and still running your mouth without thinking, how can someone be this stupid their whole damn life? His words pressed into my chest like a dull knife. I opened my mouth, but no words came. Helplessly, I looked to Daniel, who just waved his hand dismissively. Forget it, Dad. It's Mom's birthday. Let's not argue. Robert sank into uneasy silence, his face still cold. The only sound left was the clinking of cutlery on plates. Lowering my gaze, I picked up my fork and tried to take a bite of the cake. But then Daniel spoke again. Mom, where's that emerald bracelet? The one Grandma left you? My hand trembled slightly around the fork. His eyes locked onto mine, urgency shining in them. I've looked for it a few times but couldn't find it. Bring it out, Mom. That thing's valuable. It'd fetch a good price. My grip tightened. Daniel didn't notice the change in me. If anything, his excitement grew. Mom, do you know how much emeralds are worth right now? Their market price has skyrocketed. If I sell that bracelet and you and Dad add a little more, I can finally buy a house. Emily's family keeps pressuring me about it. Once I get the place, we can get married. He grinned, eyes gleaming with calculation. Her parents are professors, Mom. They're wealthy. I need to prove I'm serious. I listened quietly, my fork poking absent-mindedly at the cake. The once neat slice crumbled apart. Every word from him reeked of greed and entitlement. He was almost unrecognizable. Raising my eyes, I looked him in the face and softly asked, So you didn't come back to celebrate my birthday? You came back for the bracelet. Daniel's smile flickered for a moment. Mom, how can you say that? I came all this way to celebrate with you. Now you're doubting me? I wouldn't ask if I wasn't in a tough spot. From the side, Robert chuckled low. Helen, you're his mother. What good is hoarding stuff? Shouldn't you help your son? Why be so selfish? But it wasn't about the bracelet. It was about the person who gave it to me. That bracelet was the only gift I'd ever received in my entire life. I was born into a family where daughters were seen as burdens, nothing but inconveniences, mistakes. I survived only because my grandmother secretly rationed her food and slipped me scraps when no one else was looking. The night before she died, she must have sensed something was coming. She took me aside and led me up to the attic where she dug out a worn cloth pouch. Her frail, trembling hands pressed a vintage gold bracelet set with an emerald into mine. She whispered, No one in this family will ever truly have your back. Hide this. One day you'll need it. She was the only person who ever truly cared for me. Then I married Robert, and knowing I had nothing in this house, I hid the bracelet deep inside a flour tin in the kitchen. No one else ever went near it. Until today. I stared at Daniel, voice barely above a whisper. How did you find out about the bracelet? He shrugged casually as if it were no big deal. I saw your chat history on your phone. He said it like it was his right to invade my privacy. His tone was light with a hint of mockery. Mom, what are you hiding? What's going on between you and Dad that you won't talk about? Do you even care about this family? My heart sank, and my eyes stung with tears threatening to fall. I spoke slowly, trying to keep calm. I gave the bracelet to a friend for authentication. It wasn't a lie. I had mentioned it to Liz. Daniel's face darkened immediately, fists clenched. Without warning, he grabbed a cup and hurled it to the floor with a crash. What do you mean by that? You don't want to give it to me, is that it? I set the fork down, voice steady. Yes. The bracelet was no longer in my hands, but more importantly, I refused to hand it over to him. At 35, this was the first time I'd said no. Rage took over him. He flipped the table, plates shattering across the floor. Cake splattered everywhere, wine soaked into the tablecloth. I shouldn't have come back to celebrate your birthday, he screamed. I treat you like a mother, and you treat me like this. I didn't reply. My world spun. All I saw was wreckage. Robert's voice cut through the chaos. Helen, what could you, a housewife, possibly need money for? What's the fuss over some cheap bracelet? Daniel quickly added a threat. Just say yes or no. Think carefully. I need the money now. If you don't help me today, don't expect me to take care of you when you're old. I won't give you a single cent, Robert sneered, mocking me. Did you hear that? A poor old woman with no retirement savings daring to argue with her son. They spoke as if it were fact. But was it really? I didn't have a retirement fund. When I married Robert, he told me, "You don't have to work. I'll take care of you. Just manage the house and raise the kids." I believed him then, naively thinking it was a promise. But now I had no pension, no savings. I might even lose the right to claim Robert's Social Security benefits when he retires. Every fight ended with his cruel taunts. "If it weren't for me, you'd be homeless, starving on the streets." If I spoke up, his reply was cold and harsh. "Women like you, stuck at home washing clothes and cooking meals, are everywhere. I could easily trade you for a younger woman. Who would want you after a divorce with a son to raise? And your son still needs school." "If you don't take care of him, I won't," Daniel had said coldly. So I endured. I endured through the years until my son left for college. When I turned 40, I finally decided to look for a job. But what options did a 40-year-old woman really have? Washing dishes at a restaurant seemed to be the only thing available. The pay was miserable, but I took it anyway. I wanted my own insurance, my own security. I had always dreamed of having a retirement fund, something like Robert's reliable Social Security income, so I wouldn't have to depend on anyone else. I started saving, hoping to open an IRA and stash money away for the future. But just as I had saved enough to open the account, Daniel called. "Mom, we're going on a trip before graduation. Everyone's going, and I don't want to miss out. Can you help me out with some money?" I hesitated but told him I was planning to invest that money into retirement. He laughed on the other end. "Mom, saving for retirement? I'm about to graduate. When I get a job, I'll take care of you. You can spend whatever you want." His words touched me, not because I needed the money, but because, for a moment, I felt he cared. So I sent the money, promising myself I'd save later. But the calls kept coming. The following year, he said, "Mom, I'm thinking about law school. Tuition's expensive. Can you help again?" I hesitated, but once more I sent the money. After all, I told myself, there was still time. Year after year, something new came up. A move to a different city, a certification course, a government job application. Each time he'd say, "Mom, this is the last time." But there was never a last time. Now I'm 60. The restaurant stopped hiring me long ago. Young people worked faster, more efficiently. I had missed my chance to build a nest egg, to save for retirement. And standing there, I realized Daniel had completely forgotten the promise he made to take care of me after graduating. All that remained was a cold threat. "I won't give you a single cent." Tears filled my eyes. I glanced down at my worn shoes, a size too small, biting into my heels painfully. I had sacrificed everything for them my whole life, but to them, my sacrifices meant nothing. I lifted my head and for the first time ever spoke without hesitation. "I want a divorce. I refuse to live like this anymore." Robert jumped up, his face crimson with rage. "Say that again, you ungrateful old hag. I scold you a little and now you talk about divorce? Get out of my house." I didn't hesitate. I turned and walked away. But where could I go? This house belonged to Robert. The bank accounts were in his name. Even my credit card was tied to him. I had spent my life in this home, but stepping outside, I realized I had nowhere that was truly mine. I had no choice but to call Liz. She answered after a few rings. Hearing my hoarse voice, she was silent for a moment, then sighed softly. "Helen, I was just about to call you. I'm getting a divorce. Want to leave with me?" Liz and I met at a community college's senior education program. It was a new initiative, and the first classes were free. I'd barely been to school before, so when I saw the course list, art appreciation, beginner French yoga, I felt a flicker of excitement. On the first day, I signed up for a flower arrangement class. The professor spoke of balance, flow, and visual harmony, but I couldn't grasp a word. I sat stiffly, afraid to touch the flowers, worried I'd ruin them. Liz sat beside me. She noticed and smiled warmly, patiently explaining how to pair colors and trim stems. She was elegant, like a heroine from a movie. Not a wrinkle on her face, a faint scent of jasmine around her. perfectly manicured nails. She looked my age but seemed to live in a completely different world. Those 3 days were the happiest I'd had in years. After the trial, Liz enrolled in several long-term courses. I didn't. I couldn't afford it. I never dared ask Robert. He would never allow me to waste money on something so useless. To me, Liz's life seemed perfect. She was a college professor, financially independent. Her husband was a corporate executive. They had a brilliant, loving daughter. She never bowed her head to anyone, never scrubbed the kitchen until her wrists ached, never cried alone at night. Even her name sounded beautiful. Elizabeth Sullivan. She told me her mother named her after a favorite novel, Elizabeth, a symbol of wisdom and independence. Me? My name was random, chosen at birth with no meaning. So when Liz told me she was divorcing, I was more shocked than when Robert threw me out. I arrived at the hotel Liz mentioned. On the way, I rehearsed comforting words so many times I almost forgot my own heartbreak. But when I opened the door, Liz greeted me with a smile, holding a small birthday cake with flickering candles. "Happy birthday, Helen," she said. I froze. The cake was delicate and beautiful, like something from a TV show, a cake young girls dream of on their birthdays. In that moment, I couldn't hold back. My nose burned and I threw myself into Liz's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. I cried for a long time before finally asking, "Wait, didn't you say you were divorcing? What happened?" Liz handed me a tissue, still calm and composed. If she hadn't just told me, I would have thought it was a surprise party. She said it lightly, like any ordinary conversation. Michael's first love came back. I found out they've been having dinner and watching movies every week. He's been cheating. I was stunned. I had met Michael before. He always picked Liz up after class, brought her a jacket when it was cold. To me, he seemed perfect. I struggled for words. What does one say when a man cheats? All men are like that. As long as he comes home, it doesn't matter. But I couldn't say that to Liz. Instead, I blurted, "Michael is a piece of shit." Liz laughed in surprise. I thought at our age we should just tolerate it. I scratched my head, embarrassed. Maybe if it were someone else, I'd say that. Liz raised an eyebrow. "Then what about you? After all they put you through, don't you want to leave?" I stared at the cake silently, then whispered, "Yes, I do. 60 years old. I was exhausted. I wanted, for once, to live for myself. Compared to Liz, my divorce was easier. Robert never believed I'd actually leave. He thought I was bluffing, trying to break his pride. Even when the court summons arrived, he roared with a red face, "Fine, divorce it is! Who's afraid of who? You useless old hag! Don't come crawling back begging for a reunion. I wouldn't take you back even if you did." Liz was the one who encouraged me to file. Before I never dared. Partly because I thought divorce at my age would be humiliating, and partly because I had nowhere to go, no income, no place to sleep. The house was Robert's. The bank accounts were Robert's. The retirement fund was Robert's. I had nothing. If I left, how would I survive? But Liz told me I was wrong. She explained patiently, "Helen, even if he's the one earning, it's still marital property. You're entitled to half." Those words echoed in my mind like thunder. I had rights. I could claim half. When the court began investigating our assets, the truth came out. Robert had far more money hidden away than he ever admitted. Nearly $250,000 kept secret from me. Meanwhile, I worked odd jobs just to buy groceries, and he tightly controlled every penny. In the end, a fair ruling awarded me $65,000. For the first time, I truly realized my worth. When the divorce decree was placed in my hands, it felt like a 1,000-pound weight lifted from my shoulders. I was no longer Robert's wife, no longer the woman who couldn't even celebrate her own birthday. Walking out of the courthouse, I saw Liz waiting by the entrance. Standing beside her was a young woman. I stopped dead. Emily. I turned toward Daniel, whose face lit up with joy. He rushed forward, nearly grabbing Emily's hands in excitement. "Emily, you came for me, didn't you? You regret breaking up, right?" Emily frowned and yanked her hands away, voice thick with disgust. "Came for you? Don't flatter yourself." Daniel froze, his joyful smile faltering. Emily's tone sharpened. "After all your lies, you seriously think I'd come running back?" Suddenly, everything clicked. The Emily Daniel had been pining over was Liz's daughter. As their argument unfolded, the full story emerged. Daniel had lied to Emily about everything, claiming he was 28 when he was 35, telling her he worked for the government though he had no real job, boasting about owning a villa when the house wasn't even his. I'd always wondered why a smart, successful woman like Emily would fall for Daniel. Now I knew. It was built on lies. Emily's eyes burned with disdain. You think I left you because your parents divorced? Please. If you hadn't deceived me from the start, I wouldn't have given you a second glance. Daniel's face flushed red with anger. Grinding his teeth, he turned on me, eyes blazing. So you divorced, Dad. Fine. But why'd you have to ruin my chances too? I looked him straight in the eyes, saying each word deliberately. Do you even deserve marriage? If you hadn't lied, she wouldn't have looked at you twice. Daniel clenched his jaw, breathing ragged. He wanted to argue, but had no words. I turned away and walked to Liz. Emily, standing beside her mother, gave me a small nod, gratitude flickering in her eyes. Behind me, Daniel shouted, voice dripping with rage. Emily looks down on me because I don't have money. But you just got $65,000 in the divorce. You owe me some of it. I'm your son. What, you think I'll take care of you in the future if you don't help me now? Keep dreaming. Robert coldly added, That's right. What are you planning to spend that money on? You think it's yours? I paused, then slowly met their eyes. Why shouldn't I spend it on myself? For 60 years, I had always put others first. Not anymore. I turned and walked out the door. Behind me, Robert's voice erupted in fury, his calm finally broken. Helen, just wait. You'll regret this. You won't have a happy ending. I didn't look back. I kept walking, leaving him with nothing but my retreating back. The first thing I did after the divorce was go to the Department of Public Records to apply for a name change. When I was born, my father had casually chosen the name Helen. Ordinary, fading into the background just like me. As a child, teachers remembered me last. At my younger brother's parties, I was always the one carrying trays, never the one being celebrated. Helen was invisible, a presence so small it barely existed. No more. I refused invisibility. My marriage was over. I was no longer a wife, no longer a shadow of a man. I wanted to be me. When Liz heard I was changing my name, she was more excited than I was. She dove into history books, determined to find me the perfect name. She chose Eleanor. She smiled warmly. Eleanor means wisdom, resilience, independence. Your life starts today. I held my new ID, staring at the name printed there. From now on, I am Eleanor. 2 weeks later, Liz's divorce was still tangled. Her husband Michael refused to let go. Even after she filed, he stood firm in court, insisting, Our marriage has no irreparable breakdown. California law says if one party refuses divorce, they must live separately for a year before the court can grant it. I worried, but Liz seemed unfazed. Instead, she spent days happily browsing real estate listings from cities all over, sending me dozens of links each morning. Which city do you like best? Tell me. I'll buy a place there. We'll live together. I was surprised. What about you? Where do you want to go? She smiled, the kind of smile from someone who's already lived fully. It doesn't matter. I've been to nearly every city in the U.S. Before finalizing the divorce, I packed my few belongings. There wasn't much. Everything that was truly mine fit into a single suitcase, maybe less. As I sorted through my past, I found something unexpected. An old diary I'd forgotten I kept. Flipping through yellowed pages, I read an entry from decades ago, written in hopeful handwriting. Robert proposed today. He said he couldn't give me the wedding I wanted yet, but I told him it didn't matter. I'm grateful. Now I can finally leave this house. My fingers traced the ink. So my marriage had been an escape. Another entry, handwriting messier from excitement. Robert's moving to California for work. I never thought I'd leave this small town. I hope to see more of the world someday. Sitting on the floor, flipping pages, I felt a strange mix of feelings. Once I truly wanted to marry Robert. Once my biggest dream was to travel, to see the world beyond my small, suffocating town. But somewhere along the way, I forgot it all. That night, I told Liz, I don't want to settle yet. I spent the first half of my life stuck in that town. Even in the city, my world revolved around my husband and son. It's always been too small. I want to see what's out there. Days later, Liz called, voice full of excitement. Eleanor, I bought a camper van. Let's hit the road. Liz was always ahead of the curve. On the road, she taught me how to film videos and document our journey. She helped me set up a social media account, The Runaway Diaries. Every day, I recorded pieces of my new life. I never expected someone like me to be adored by thousands of young people. Comments flooded in. You two are living the dream. Meanwhile, I'm stuck in a soul-crushing job. When I turn 60, I want to be just like you. This is what life should be, starting over at 60. So jealous. I didn't always get their slang, but I loved the phrase starting life. Of course, not every restart was easy. For instance, Michael still refused to let go. He kept watching our videos, and every now and then, he'd send Liz flowers or even show up unexpectedly at our stops, standing outside the hotel, apologizing sincerely. He promised he'd cut ties with his first love and begged her for another chance. But Liz didn't even spare him a glance. Then there was Daniel. He still called, but never to ask how I was doing. Instead, he'd say, Mom, you must be making a ton of money from those videos, right? Then came the guilt trip. Dad's a mess without you. He forgets his blood pressure meds, and now he's had a stroke. He's paralyzed. And what did that have to do with me? I hung up and blocked his number. Daniel wasn't wrong about one thing. I was making money. Plenty of it. A year ago, I never would have imagined reaching financial freedom at 60. Life sure has its ironies. I had spent decades living like a servant, too afraid even to buy myself a nice dress. Now, I was driving across the country in an RV, earning more than Robert ever did in his entire life. If I'd known then that 60 was really the golden age, I wouldn't have wasted my youth on them. In every city we visited, Emily, Liz's daughter, sent us local food spots and sightseeing tips. When she could, she flew out to join us, or we'd video chat while sipping coffee, talking about everything and nothing. One day, I sighed to Liz, You're so lucky to have such a wonderful daughter. Emily grinned at me through the screen. Don't be jealous, Eleanor. I'm your daughter, too. I paused, then laughed. A year passed in a flash. Michael finally relented. Thanks to Liz's persistence and Emily's firm insistence, he agreed to the divorce. That day, we stood outside the courthouse. Liz held the final papers, exhaling deeply, as if shedding decades of chains. Suddenly, she turned to me. Eleanor, I've made a decision. I'm going abroad. I blinked. Where to? She smiled. France. I was surprised. You met Michael in France. You're not still holding on, are you? Liz shook her head. Of course not. A soft glow lit her eyes. I just want to revisit my younger self. I studied there for years, made so many friends. They're all in their 60s now, too. If I don't go now, I might never see them again. I was happy for her. Then I hope you have an amazing time and reunite with everyone you want to see. Liz sighed. I thought you'd be upset, maybe blame me for leaving you. I smiled gently. How could I? You taught me something important. Once you find yourself, you're never truly alone. She laughed, eyes sparkling. Maybe you'll visit me when you finish your road trip across the U.S., fly to France and visit an old friend. I nodded. Maybe I will. Then you better start learning French, Eleanor. Emily says I don't need to. As long as I know how to gesture, I'll be fine. France is full of Americans anyway. We looked at each other and burst out laughing. The journey goes on. Life is still fresh, still new.